Good evening, class. So, how are you all? Fine. All right. So, how was the paper? It was fine. Were you able to complete on time? आपने कब start किया है paper? Okay. Okay. Fine. So, let's begin. What's your name, please? Prateek. Amita. Okay. All right. So, the test was with regards to disaster management, right? So, in the starting, we will see some of the keywords which we should know, right? And I hope most of you would be knowing the stuff which I'm telling you, but still we need to emphasize on certain things like, yes, please pay attention everybody, disaster risk reduction. It is an integral part of what? Integral part of social as well as economic development, and it is essential if development is to be sustainable for the future. The point I am trying to make is if we have to have development which is sustainable. देखिए बहुत मुश्किलों से development होता है, and what disaster do? Disaster एक झटके में उसको खत्म कर देता है, right? Now we should know the key international agreements. So what are the key international agreements with regards to disaster management? Starting में we will take few minutes and then we will directly move to the questions. So what are the key international agreements with regards to disaster management? You should have them properly. Yes. Sendai, okay. What else? Okay. What else? Okay, fine. So, Yokohama. Try to have what? I know you must be knowing this, है ना? सब पढ़ के आए हैं, everybody is writing the means. So, we should have some chronology, right? Starting from this, then moving to MDGs, then moving to Johannesburg 2002, right? So we should be aware of all these, the future we want, Sendai, and then fine with this. And specifically, what are the sustainable development goal numbers? So if we talk particularly about disaster management, then what is, can you tell the specific goal which is related to disaster management? Specifics. Okay, क्योंकि भले से ही पेपर का नाम होता है जनरल स्टडीज, बट वी हैव टू बी स्पेसिफिक इन ऑर्डर टू गेट गुड मार्क्स. 12, 13, okay. Okay. Is the sustainable development goal with regards to quality education and health and well-being, can we relate this to topic of disaster management? Yes, we can. We will see this when we will address the question of vulnerability, right? So you should be very much clear, because sustainable development goals, these are at the core of what? Disaster management. So these numbers should be very much clear. Fine. So this you please ensure that you know all the numbers, like SDG 11. It is very specific. Now very important, ये सभी ने देखा होगा. Disaster management में देखिए, what is the number of questions in disaster management? Hardly 1 or 2 question is asked each year as a part of GS paper 3. But disaster management का there is an advantage. Advantage क्या है इसमें? We can have schematics, we can have diagrams, maps and everything, right? And we should be clear about critical infrastructure. जब disaster management पढ़ते हैं तो critical infrastructure. What are the examples of critical infrastructure? Sorry? Communication line. What else? Telecommunications, yes. Early warning systems. What else? Early warning systems, would it be a part of critical infrastructure or would it be a part of disaster management system? System only, okay. What else? Health infrastructure, fine. Financial, number of, which are essential, which are very crucial for our daily needs and for our survivability. So we have number of these. Why I am showing you this? Reason, क्योंकि disaster management में infrastructure is intricately related. Fine. Also keywords like build back better, वो सब आना चाहिए आपके answers में. Fine. Now let us directly move to question number 1, and that is disasters know no borders. In this context, discuss India's role in regional disaster preparedness and capacity building efforts and associated challenges. तो बहुत clear cut straightforward question है. हमेशा ध्यान रखिए that we need to address each and every part of the question. So disasters, no boundary, no borders. What is India's role, associated challenges, and finally we need to conclude. How can we introduce this? इसको start कैसे किया जा सकता है? How have you introduced?
Geographical phenomenon which transcend the national borders.
Okay.
So the response for it should also be should involve cooperation between states, and India can play a vital role in Southeast.
Fine. So are disasters only geographical? They can be man-made also. Yes. So it's a good opening, right? So disasters no borders. So as you have just mentioned, and these transnational threats of disasters which affect lives and livelihood, these is increasing because of the onset of what? Climate change. Fine. Yes, देखिए introduction, there can be multiple ways. For example, you can start with some data, reports, recent examples, but always try and ensure what it should address the demand of the question, whether the example is in sync with what is being asked or not. That is the only concern, right? So it's about disasters, disaster, whether it be natural or be it man-made. So what are these doing? These are transcendenting what? Geographical boundaries. We will see this. क्योंकि अगर हमने इसको justify कर दिया, then we will justify what is being asked, right? And these are transcendenting what? Geographical boundaries. Therefore, we require partnerships. Just you have rightly mentioned. But these partnerships, they come with their own set of challenges. Challenges have been asked also. इनका अपना खुद का भी challenge होता है. We will see all of this, right? And why this is required? This is required for effective preparedness and response. Fine. And you can always use some datas to support your answers. Between this much people they have died, this is the cost of economy, right? And everything. Now disasters no borders. अब देखिए इसको सोच कैसे सकते हैं in that, क्योंकि एग्जाम में प्रेशर होगा, तो इसको सोचा कैसे जा सकता है? डिजास्टर्स सबको पता है, these disasters, earthquakes, tsunamis and everything. बट ये ट्रांसनेशनल कैसे हैं? इसके एग्जांपल्स कैसे सोचेंगे? हाउ डू वी थिंक अबाउट इट? यस प्लीज. Fine. So thinking of region, Asia Pacific region and other regions we can mention. Also we can use our geographical knowledge. For example, if we talk about earthquakes and tsunamis, so we can mention what? We can mention Pacific Ring of Fire, because it includes a number of countries, and then you can name also this second most seismically active zone of Alpine Himalayan region. So just you have mentioned it. Thereafter, this devastating earthquake of Turkey. So it was not limited or restricted to Turkey only, parts of Syria. So fine. Also you can mention about floods. कि floods जो हैं, these are also transboundary, and you can thereby name some of the river system, river basins like Amu Darya, and you can mention the Central Asian countries, Indus, Mekong, Sylvan. So this way you can present your answer. Fine with this? Also, disasters no borders, and these are increasing with respect to onslaught of climate change. So इसको आप connect कर सकते हैं क्या? कैसे कनेक्ट करेंगे ड्रॉट्स को ट्रांसनेशनल बाउंड्री से? कैसे कनेक्ट करेंगे? व्हाट आई हैव आस्क्ड इज Sahel region is an example that you are giving. Excellent. So he has connected what? He has connected a disaster with climate change, and that is not respecting your national boundaries. Fine with this? So this is how you link the things. And always try to show it in a schematic format, because it breaks the monotony. Fine. And what about this Hindu Kush Himalayan region? Earthquakes also you can mention. Yes, वो question भी था. Glof. This is how we address the parts. Fine. And this is the basic diagram. Why this diagram has come over here? Yes. Pre-disaster, yes. Pre-disaster we had certain stages, then during disaster and post-disaster. You must have gone through all of this. Now coming to the second part, discuss India's role. So India's role is very crucial. अब होता क्या है actually उस 7 या 8 मिनट में there is a flood of thought. Flood of thought, what do I mean by flood of thought? कि some random CDRI would come to your mind. Some random G20 would come to your mind. But usko if we are able to give subheadings and then different points, so it would be more presentable, right? And it would save your time, your efforts, और एग्जामिनर के लिए बहुत आसान हो जाएगा उसको समझना. इसमें हम कैसे समझ सकते हैं इंडियाज रोल इन डिजास्टर प्रिपेयर्डनेस. सो डिजास्टर प्रिपेयर्डनेस किस चीज का पार्ट है? इट इज अ पार्ट ऑफ डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट साइकिल ओनली. कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग. सो इन डिजास्टर प्रिपेयर्डनेस, ऑल्सो इन क्लाइमेट चेंज मिटिगेशन, ऑल्सो एज अ पार्ट ऑफ डिजास्टर रिस्पॉन्स. की डिजास्टर हो गया उसको कैसे रिस्पॉन्स करेंगे और कैसे हम रिकवर करेंगे डिजास्टर से. सो इफ वी टॉक अबाउट डिजास्टर प्रिपेयर्डनेस and that too with respect to region, right? Then early warning systems, here we can give examples like yes, excellent, 2007 tsunami early warning system. What else? So इस तरीके से we can give some certain examples. IRNSS, बॉर्डर्स ट्रांसेंड करता है, प्रीलिम्स में भी पूछा था वे बैक इन 2018 1500, ये सबको पता है डेटा, राइट? कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग, बिमस्टेक, थिंक ऑफ रीजन, बिमस्टेक, बट बिमस्टेक हैज इट्स ओन सेट ऑफ चैलेंजेस, राइट? सो बिमस्टेक सेंटर, देयर आफ्टर ट्रेनिंग एंड एडेप्टेशन. सो this gives a much better idea. So this is one of the ways. This is not the only way, but this is definitely one of the way. Fine. If we talk about climate change mitigation, then what examples can we use with regards to India? And why climate change mitigation is over here? Climate change mitigation यहाँ पे क्यों आया है? क्योंकि अगर हमने climate change को, it is the climate change which is what? Accentuating disasters. These are intricately linked. So what are the examples? Fine. What else? Okay, what else? देखिए एग्जाम्पल सभी को पता है, राइट? इफ आई वुड हैव बीन सिटिंग ओवर हियर और कोई पूछता तो एकदम से नहीं आता. इट्स टोटली फाइन. वी कैन थिंक कि भाई सोचना कैसे ना, क्लाइमेट चेंज को रोकना है, क्लाइमेट चेंज को रोकना है, फाइन. फॉर दैट वी नीड टू हैव रिन्यूएबल सोर्सेज ऑफ एनर्जी. सोलर में इंडिया का सबसे बड़ा कंट्रीब्यूशन, सो वी कैन डायरेक्टली लिंक इट. फाइन विद दिस. देन वी कैन हैव लीगल सपोर्ट. वी कैन गिव डिजास्टर रेजिलिएंट इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर डेवलपमेंट. अब जैसे ही इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर की बात आती है, व्हाट शुड कम टू योर माइंड? CDRI, राइट? अब होता क्या है, CDRI कहीं अलग से लिख दिया, कुछ पॉइंट कहीं अलग से लिख दिया. फाइन. अगेन एंड अगेन आई एम रिपीटिंग सेम थिंग. देन रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी के रिस्पेक्ट में लाइक डिफरेंट एग्जांपल्स यू कैन यूज. नाउ वी विल टॉक अबाउट डिजास्टर रिस्पांस. सो व्हाट इज द कीवर्ड व्हेन इट कम्स टू इंडिया स्पेशली? डिजास्टर रिस्पांस में इंडिया के लिए क्या कोई स्पेसिफिक वर्ड है क्या? NDRF, okay, it is one of the bodies which is related. Fine. What else? Keyword. India is first responder, ऐसा कुछ सुना है? Net security provider, सबने पढ़ा होगा definitely. Yes, first responder. So those words, they must come into your answer. They must come into your answer. It is because of the long coastline, it is because of the locational aspect that we are in a position to what? Respond effectively in a fast manner. Fine with this? So strategic aspect, so net security provider in the region, first response, and then we can give examples. Operation Vanilla in Madagascar, Cyclone Dine. Then Operation Dost, recent example. Nepal floods, 2015. We can give different examples. Maldives, a number of examples. Fine with this? So this I've just talked about. So disaster recovery. because we have to build back better. How do we recover? So what we can write, what should we write? कि इंडिया का रोल always and always, सी क्वेश्चन क्या पूछा है ना. So as a part of recovery, financial assistance. As a part of recovery, there should be collaboration among different bodies, right? Different bodies like BRICS, Asian Bank. Now please pay close attention, क्योंकि यहाँ पे जो पॉइंट आने वाला है उसको आप इंट्रोडक्शन में भी यूज कर सकते हैं और वो अलग से क्वेश्चन बन सकता है फॉर दिस पर्टिकुलर ईयर. एंड दैट इज, कोई बता सकते हैं क्या पॉइंट होगा अगर हम इंटरनेशनल इंस्टीट्यूशंस को मोबिलाइज करने की बात कर रहे हैं? यहाँ पे क्या पॉइंट आना चाहिए? इंडिया इज हैविंग चेयरमैनशिप ऑफ G20, राइट? ये सभी को पता है, नथिंग न्यू अबाउट इट. सो अंडर इंडियाज G20 presidency, this disaster risk reduction, it has been added to groups, areas of cooperation, number of areas of cooperation, youth engagement, development, number of cooperations, so it has been added. So इससे भी आप start कर सकते थे अपने आंसर को. Fine with this? Thereafter, nothing comes free of cost, no free lunch. So these, they have their own set of challenges. अब challenges क्या हो सकते हैं? What are the challenges? Yes, exactly. जो चीजें हमने पढ़ी हैं उन सब में चैलेंज हो सकता है. Yes. Right. Exactly. Exactly. So you are thinking perfect on perfect lines, because India's role in regional or region हमें सभी को पता है how is our region. So lack of stable regional institution, failure of SARC, India, Pakistan, then confrontation with China, as you have rightly mentioned, right? So Maldives में there is an issue. Then poor economic integration, also cross-border crimes. Now how can we link this cross-border crimes with the associated challenges? Can you think? Cross-border crimes को हम कैसे link कर सकते हैं? Illegal, but how do we link that to disasters? No, I'm asking, जैसे हमने ये पॉइंट्स देखे भाई, these are the challenges and these are direct, हम इसको एसोसिएट कर सकते हैं. इसी तरीके से क्रॉस बॉर्डर क्राइम्स, अब जैसे ही बोला क्रॉस बॉर्डर्स तो हमारे दिमाग में आना चाहिए क्रॉस बॉर्डर क्राइम कहाँ पे होता है? इंडिया पाकिस्तान बॉर्डर्स. बट इंडिया पाकिस्तान ज्यादा कोलैबोरेशन नहीं है विद रिस्पेक्ट टू डिजास्टर्स. सो व्हाट शुड कम टू आवर माइंड? बे ऑफ बंगाल, notorious for what? Cyclones, and that also hits Bangladesh, right? So Bangladesh और India के बीच में there is what? Cooperation, but this cooperation, it takes a back seat. Why it takes a back seat? Because of the smuggling issues. So it limits the scope for enhanced cooperation. कि आप तो cooperate कर रहे हैं, but there are, so I hope you have got the point. So this dimension you could have added. Also there are diplomatic backlash, Indo-Nepal relations and everything. So any other point which you want to add? What are the other challenges? So these are mainly with respect to what? These are mainly with respect to geopolitics. There are issues with respect to technology. What is the way forward then? How do we conclude? How have you concluded, Amita? Please tell. Okay, fine. Okay, fine. Prateek? Okay. Okay. What's your name? I just forgot. Mayur. Okay. Okay, ये रह गया. Okay. Fine. One of the ways of conclusion is if we can link that to our question only. वो words बार बार आने चाहिए, right? So these are the generic points की challenges को कैसे overcome किया जा सकता है and everything. So institutionalization, multilateralism and everything, establishing national policy for disaster management, then cooperation for infrastructure. So this we have already talked about. Now directly coming to what? Directly coming to how do we conclude? Conclude करने के लिए आप क्या कर सकते हैं? We can use what? We can use that India's determination, India's role and efforts in regional disaster preparedness and capacity building efforts. It is a clear demonstration to the fact that India truly believes in Vasudev Kutumbakam, and disasters they impact our collective future. So G20 से आप इसको link कर सकते हैं. So this is one of the ways, right? So let me show you. Disaster impacts all the countries, जैसे आपने लिखा था, and threaten our collective future. And India's role, directly we have lifted the line from here, from the question. Role and capacity building is a clear demonstration to its commitment of theme of Vasudev Kutumbakam, one earth, one family and one future. Fine with this? Next, now this can come as a separate question also. Disaster risk reduction. So what are the priorities and the expected outcomes? So basic generic points are there, but you should go through this. So it is very well within the framework of this Sendai only. So इसमें भी किस चीज की बात की है? Global coverage, early warning systems, commitment towards infrastructure, financial frameworks, what strengthening of disaster response, national global level, and increased application of ecosystem based approaches for disaster risk. Now what do we mean by ecosystem approaches to disaster risk? ये बता सकते हैं?
Ecosystems can across the borders, like Himalayan ecosystem spans from Afghanistan to Myanmar, so coordinated response for that ecosystem. Tropical forests, like in the Burma, जो hotspot है.
Fine. Fine. Are you aware of this nature based solutions? Fine. So let us move to our second question. So second question is, now बहुत direct question है, examine the vulnerability profile of India and mention different types of vulnerabilities with respect to disasters. What is the importance of vulnerability and risk assessment when it comes to pre-disaster management? And finally we need to conclude. But उससे पहले अब ये क्वेश्चन किसके बारे में? Vulnerability के बारे में. So at least we can mention one line about vulnerability. What do we mean by vulnerability? What is the concept of vulnerability all about? So this can be one introduction. Susceptible to the consequences. So is it the complete definition or the complete concept? Yes, anybody would like to add anything? Keep. Fine. You're telling fine, but what is the definition? कि एक line में how do we define it?
Characteristics of the place or region which makes susceptible to the consequences of disaster.
Also we have to what link? It is the coping capacity of the societies, right? That damage is minimized or mitigated, right? And we can have a schematic, a diagram also about risk. We will see this. Risk, vulnerability, then there is hazard, then there is disaster. Or disaster or I'm coming to this, but what is the basic difference between hazard or disaster? में क्या basic difference होता है? Is disaster. Okay. Anything else? It happened, हो गया, है ना? हो सकता है, जैसे कि बिजली का तार है तो वो डिजास्टर नहीं है, अगर कोई हाथ लगा देगा तो डिजास्टर हो जाएगा. फाइन. Now coming to our question, examine the vulnerability profile. So the concept, now these should be very much clear. Concept implies measure of risk combined with the level of social and economic ability to cope. Now this is very important because this ensures what? This ensures that we resist the disruption, major disruptions, and this way you can add a schematic. Schematics का बहुत ज़्यादा scope है with this disaster management. So fine with this? I hope these needs no explanation. Now coming directly to what vulnerability profile of India. अब vulnerability profile में हमें क्या लिखना है? what we need to write about vulnerability profile of India. First of all, बिना map के do not write this. First things first. India का map, are you all comfortable drawing India's map? If anybody is not comfortable, then one very simple solution. अगर आता है तो it's very good. अगर नहीं आता, what you can do? To syntaxial bend. So this is the shortcut. But it's always better that we know how to make maps. Fine. अब बात की है vulnerability profile की. तो vulnerability profile में there are different disasters, earthquakes. So it is purely a factual question. 12.6% is what drought prone areas and everything. So this we need to memorize only. Right? कि disasters के लिए इतना vulnerable है, cyclones, for floods. This you have to memorize only. And keeping this thing in mind, we have what? We have different National Disasters Act and everything policies, starting with 2005. Aftermath of what? Bhuj, right? So vulnerability profile आप बता देंगे. और vulnerability cyclones भी आते हैं, earthquakes भी are there, floods are also there, avalanches, landslide. You name the disaster, and we are vulnerable to that disaster, right? Thereafter, different types of vulnerabilities. Now what is the answer for this? Okay, you please mention. You have social, what else? Economic, all right. Political, and what else? Community vulnerability. Okay. So you're all right, but basically there are 4 types of vulnerabilities. There is physical vulnerability, then we have social vulnerability, economic vulnerability, and environmental vulnerability. और उसके अंदर we can have different vulnerabilities like so physical, social, economic, and environmental. अब what are the key aspects of physical vulnerability? ये vulnerability पे पहले भी question आ चुका है UPSC में, right? Physical vulnerability, इसको कैसे सोचेंगे? Physical vulnerability अगर पूछ लिया, so what do we know about this physical vulnerability? Mostly infrastructure आता है. Okay, what else? So can I not say कि infrastructure is also a part of this economic vulnerability? So basically this physical vulnerability, it includes the geographical proximity to the disasters. कि अगर coastal region में कोई है तो वो ज़्यादा vulnerable है, Himalayan region में है, so these are more vulnerable. So that also you are right, you are not wrong कि infrastructure, it also depends upon the material which has been used for the construction, whether it is resilient for disasters or not. So population density levels, very crucial aspect. कि earthquake आया but वहाँ पे लोग ही नहीं रहते, so there is no harm. Remoteness of a settlement, then site, design, materials which are used for critical infrastructure. So critical infrastructure हमें अच्छे से पता होना चाहिए, which are the examples of that, and housing. And you can use this UNISDR. What is this? United Nations Office for this disaster risk reduction only. And what is the example? अगर हम material की बात करते हैं, suppose there is a wooden infrastructure. So wooden infrastructure जो है वो earthquake से तो resilient है, but it is what? Prone to fires. It is prone to fires. Social vulnerability. Society का level क्या है with respect to education, with respect to peace and stability, right? Proper अगर order होगा society में, so it would be in a position to bounce back quickly. इसीलिए sustainable development goal of education is related to disaster management. वरना हम वैसे सोचते हैं कि education वो कैसे related है? It is not related. It is related, right? With respect to this social vulnerability. Also, there are certain age group. Suppose a flood comes, so old age people, children, right, and specially able people, these are not able to evacuate themselves if it is necessary. And it was asked also in ethics paper, order में arrange कीजिए and everything. And then economic needs no explanation, poor and vulnerable, these are more affected. Environmental, जहाँ पे degradation होगा, obviously it would be more vulnerable. Number of example all of us have. So now coming to what? Importance of vulnerability and risk assessment. एक एक शब्द पकड़िए and just try and answer this. So importance with regards to pre-disaster management. So this diagram I hope ये सबको clear होगा. In pre-disaster, what we have? Preparedness, mitigation, prevention. Prevention always better than cure. Right? What was that essay last year? Roof वाला है ना, तो वो यही है, वो यही है. वो कुआं खोदने जब जा रहे हैं, जब आग लग गई, so there is no use. So pre-disaster is reduction phase is extremely easy, but at the same time we cannot stop what earthquakes to happen. We cannot stop them. So disaster, if it impacts, so what is the response? How do we recover, and what is the development phase? Right. Now, what is the importance? What have you mentioned? इसका इंपॉर्टेंस पूछा था, तो क्या इंपॉर्टेंस? Yes, it would reduce losses and everything. वही सब पॉइंट्स आएंगे. What is measured can be managed and everything. So starting with it strengthens the governance part at all the levels. So basic, देखिए disaster management में बहुत generic points आएंगे. Again and again same things would keep on repeating. So local knowledge and census data, they can be used for what elements which are at risk. Also quantification of risk. Then it helps to prepare what hazard map, evacuation plan, response plan, and identification of safe areas. In fact, this is the most important point out of all these, because this is what actually happens. भले ही earthquake हो, what happens? We prepare a hazard map. Drought prone areas, we have what? We do mapping कि कहाँ पे संभावना देखें, right? So different atlases, landslide atlas by ISRO and everything. So this is the most important point. Thereafter, robust early warning system. अगर पहले से ही पता लग जाए कब disaster is going to occur, everything would be sorted. But it is not the case with each and every what disaster. And you can use the example of Odisha. Odisha model का आप example दे सकते हैं. There was a super cyclone back in 1999, around those times. Thousands of people officially they were killed, but now hardly any life is lost. Fine. So it is because of their robust preparedness only. Then this helps in minimizing the loss and everything. These are basic generic points. Resilience and prevent emergence of new risk. Fine. And then it facilitates the mainstreaming of concern in the development planning and processes. Again, this is very important. This is very important. Let me draw your attention to a separate thing, and that is sand mining. थोड़ा ध्यान से सुनिएगा. Sand mining जो है, sand is the second most extracted resource after what water, but there is no mainstreaming of that issue, sand mining का. And sand mining has massive repercussions with regards to not only your geographical features, there is erosion, also has a direct correlation with marine ecosystem and everything, but उसका mainstreaming नहीं हुआ है. So similarly, this vulnerability and risk assessment, it can mainstream what has been left out from the development processes. Development processes, development industry अलग से word दिया हुआ है syllabus में, yes, and definitely scientific and technological capacities, they would keep on enhancing. Now moving to our third question, and that is discuss about regions of India which are vulnerable to landslide. Landslides पे बार बार क्वेश्चन पूछा गया है, इनफैक्ट 2 बार पूछा है. क्या क्वेश्चन था? हिमालयास एंड डिफरेंशिएट हिमालयास एंड वेस्टर्न घाट्स, वो एनसीईआरटी में दिया हुआ था. बट यहाँ पे क्वेश्चन क्या है? रीजन विच आर वनरेबल टू लैंडस्लाइड्स. Thereafter we need to mention causes, the consequences, and how these are classified and mapped. इसका क्लासिफिकेशन कैसे होता है और how do we map these, and finally we conclude. So let's begin. अब क्वेश्चन किसके ऊपर है? लैंडस्लाइड के बारे में. At least one line we can mention about landslides. So what are landslides? Sudden displacement. What else? हाउ हैव यू इंट्रोड्यूस्ड, आपने कैसे स्टार्ट किया अपना आंसर?
displacement of soil and rocks on sloping areas.
ऑल राइट फाइन, दिस स्लोप वर्ड इज वेरी क्रूशियल, स्लोप वर्ड, क्योंकि अगर देयर इज डिस्प्लेसमेंट ऑन अ प्लेन कोई फर्क ही नहीं पड़ेगा, बट स्लोप ग्रेडियंट्स इन ज्योग्राफी आर वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. फाइन, सो movement of mass and ये सब everybody is aware of this. So landslide is a type of mass wasting under the direct influence of what, gravity, and you can make your answer more presentable by, you already know all the things, but उसको presentable कैसे किया जा सकता है? This term encompasses five modes of slope movement. What are those 5 modes of slope movements? Yes, yes, but falls और उसके अंदर फिर there are different. No, creep is a very slow movement. Landslide is a very fast movement. So falls, then we have topples, then we have what, spreads, then we have flows, and finally we have slides. और इसी का एक part है आपका landslide. So this way you can make it also. Now these can be further subdivided as a type of geological material, bedrock, debris and everything. Again I am telling, question landslide के बारे में नहीं पूछा है. क्वेश्चन किसके बारे में पूछा है? रीजन्स विच आर वनरेबल टू लैंडस्लाइड. गलती क्या कर देते हैं कि लैंडस्लाइड के बारे में आता है तो इतना लिख के आ गए, वो नहीं करना. इट इज जस्ट अ पार्ट ऑफ इंट्रोडक्शन. आई होप यू आर गेटिंग राइट. Then debris flows, what were you just mentioning? These are commonly referred to as mud flows or what? Mudslides and rock falls. Rock falls कहाँ पे होते हैं? Western Ghats or in Himalayas or both? It's more of a feature with regards to your Western Ghats, right? Steep escarpments and everything. Now directly coming to our question after the introduction part. Regions of India which are vulnerable to landslides. Yes, please. What are the regions? And Meghalaya. हाँ जी.
Northeastern hills, Western Himalayas, and Western Ghats.
3. Apart from these 3 regions, okay, fine. We will see one more region, and that is Araku Valley of Andhra Pradesh. It is 0.01 million square kilometers of the land which is vulnerable to landslides. अब इसका अच्छा इंट्रोडक्शन कैसा हो सकता है? If we can give some data that out of 329 million square kilometers of hectares of Indian land, how much percentage is vulnerable to landslide? Yes, any idea? Vulnerability profile. So yes, no, not 0.5%. So देखिए यहीं पे जो है वो हमें थोड़ा सा एक्स्ट्रा एफर्ट लाना है और यहीं से हमारा आधा मार्क्स 1 मार्क बढ़ जाएगा. फाइन विद दिस. सो यू कैन इंट्रोड्यूस that India is among the top 5 countries which are prone to landslides, and there is one death in what, 100 square kilometers as a result, as a consequence of landslides. So this is how you can introduce. Also question India के regions के बारे में है. So you can mention about the percentage of the geography. So it is not 0.5. So if we exclude the snow covered areas, yes, what happened?
I guess it was too far off from actually.
It's fine. It's fine. I know lot to remember and number of stuff is there, so it's totally fine. So excluding the snow covered areas, approximately 12.6% of geographical land is prone to landslide. इसको लिख लीजिए, right? And then without map it cannot work. ये तो हर कोई लिख के आएगा ना. This everybody would write, but we need to write about this Andhra Pradesh Araku Valley also. Fine. And if I may ask you कि half of the landslides वो कहाँ पे होती हैं? In this Himalayan region, northeast या फिर Western Ghats? आई नो प्रीलिम्स पास करके आए हैं, नहीं पूछेंगे, बट स्टिल अगर हमें ये छोटी छोटी जानकारियां हो सो इट वुड गिव अ बेटर इम्पैक्ट ऑन द एग्जामिनर, क्योंकि वेल रेड लगेंगे. सो वी हैव around half of these in northeastern Himalayas, right? So nearly half of the country's landslide prone area